This isn't a speaker. This isn't a level bed. And this isn't a pane. Okay, so the most common question I've been asked is, which 3D printer to buy? Now, if you'd asked me 4 years ago, it would have been Creality. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, it would have been Prusa. But right this moment, there's one no-brainer brand, Bambu Lab. So that part is easy. But which printer to buy is a bit more complex. So this video will help you choose, and it's not as simple as you'd think. So I thought, instead of doing a dry review of all the features, I'd instead focus on how each Bambu Lab printer aligns to a set of different personas. This is ultimately what you need to know. Whether you're a woodworker, a D&D enthusiast, or any of the other personas that I've examined, there are unique qualities of each of these printers that will help you decide what is the best fit for you. I'll also dispel some common myths that have popped up several times in comments and my members' Discord forum to make sure you're making decisions based on the latest and correct information. But first, let me introduce you to Bambu Lab, the company. Now, there are some firms who just exude innovation, and they're not the ones you think. Bambu Lab are one of those firms that deserve a bit of a spotlight, not just on the printers themselves, but on some of their solutions and their mindset to challenges. With the A1, for example, you see it from the moment you turn it on. Did you spot that? Everyone in their right mind would respond to a request to add a startup sound by adding a speaker. And obviously a bit more cost of components, complexity, manufacturing. But that wasn't a speaker making that nice boot up tune. That's the stepper motor making the sounds. Feature added, no cost, no complexity, genius. Bambu Lab have delivered a range of printers that are suitable for anyone. You can even print directly from the Bambu Studio app. Where things get a little more interesting is deciding which printer to buy. The speed at which Bambu Lab are innovating means that their newer printers have awesome features that really disrupt their range. So the first thing to note is the order of release. First, it was the X1C, then the P1S, then the A1. And this means there are some truly range-leading features in their lowest cost option. Fundamentally, a lot of videos spend all the time focusing on the devices, when this all boils down to you and your interest. Now, I'm going to make some decisions for you and make some assumptions, but feel free to decide yourself if you have a niche need. So first, let's forget about the things people have focused on for years. Firstly, forget about speed. All these printers are very fast and very capable. You can print a Benchy in 16 minutes or 18 minutes. Who cares? It's very fast. Secondly, forget about bed leveling and technical difficulty. They're all very good and easy to use. You just hit print and it'll deal with it. I mean, the sensor technology in this printer is extraordinary. It just doesn't care about your setup. It just works. Finally, forget about print quality. They're all outstanding. This figure is printed on the A1, the cheapest of the range. It's ridiculously detailed, accurate and clean. There's differences in the control panels. The X1C is undoubtedly the highest quality, but then it jumps to the A1 with its lower res colour screen, and then back up to the P1S with its LCD screen. In truth, all work well, so I wouldn't call it a huge deciding factor. All of them have inbuilt cameras. Again, the X1C has a much higher frames per second and higher res than the lower res P1S is, but they all do the job. Essentially, you can see if your print is working or not. But the three factors you should think hard about to match your hobbies and interests are: number one, the nozzle design. Now, for anything detailed, the quick swap nozzle of the A1 range is an enormous feature. I can't overstate this enough. This has been the bane of 3D printing for many a year, and the P1S and X1C made this easier, but not easy. Whilst you can change the nozzles on these printers, I must admit I never have, given that little bit of friction or fiddling with the Allen keys and screws that you drop. But the A1 has a brilliant design that uses a magnet to align and a single clip to secure, and that's it. You could almost change the nozzles without any hands at all. Eh, Bambu Lab? I know an iteration when I see one. Tool changer coming soon? But why is this so important? Well, let's look at the difference. Increasing the nozzle size radically increases the speed of the prints. So let's say I'm printing these feet for an outdoor woodworking project. They lift the wood off the ground and as a result, hugely increase its lifespan. These are simple, robust shapes that I just need to print quickly. They're not even going to be visible. So any difference in layer lines is really not that important. Now, looking at the different nozzle sizes, you can see how radical the print time is between them all. I mean, it's 12 hours on a 0.2mm nozzle or 2 hours on a 0.6mm. But let's say you also want to do detailed work, where you want to print labels for your workshop, or you're also interested in a completely different hobby like miniatures. This is where the 0.2mm nozzle is a game changer. The second thing you need to think about is the enclosure. Now, in almost all cases, you'll be printing in PLA and PETG most of the time. They're easy to print materials and they work for almost all use cases. However, some hobbies may demand stronger or specialist filament types. In this case, I'd say the filtered enclosure becomes essential to avoid nasty particles and VOCs. No ifs, no buts. This moves you into the P1S and the X1C. But it can work the other way, like if you're into woodworking or DIY and plan to put this in your workshop, then the enclosure plays a different role. That's keeping all that dust, the drips, the oil spatters and paint explosions away from your printer. And I've gone with the P1S in my craft room simply because it's small and the core XY design of the P1S means its active workspace is slightly smaller than the A1. So the enclosure is definitely something to consider. Now the final area to consider is the AMS. The AMS is an additional accessory that allows you to switch between filament reels automatically mid-print. This is obviously useful for multicoloured printing, but equally, if you're running larger prints overnight and you run out of, say, white filament, it can automatically move on to the next white reel. Now, the P1S and the X1C come with the AMS module, and the A1 comes with what's called the AMS Lite. This is slightly complicated as the light version is newer, so whilst it's not as neat and streamlined, it contains a range of improvements on the original AMS. The central gripping of the filament rather than using rubber wheels is also a sensible upgrade. This avoids any issues with different diameters of reels and filament brands, not least cardboard reels. So I really like the AMS Lite. Yeah, it looks messier, It takes up more space, so if this is an issue, then the enclosed version is for you. But for raw performance, it's got a lot of generational improvements that are hard to ignore. So let's see how these features apply to your interests. Now, stating the obvious here, these aren't meant to cover all possible hobbies you could use 3D printers in. There are thousands. Nor is it likely that you'll only have one hobby, but they should be useful to understand how different interests may shift what you need in terms of specification and help you decide for your own interests. Let's start with home organisation. You want to create super flexible storage solutions across your whole home? If only there was a video covering that. You want to make super cool cable management solutions? There's no such thing available for free, surely. But this is actually a pretty simple use case. You just need a reliable, simple printer, and really, it's volume over anything else. You'll only need PLA for any prints, so the A1 would be an immensely capable printer for this. Let's now move on to woodworking and DIY. 3D printers offer an amazing new capability for anyone remotely interested in DIY solutions. My workshop is rammed full of handy jigs, storage solutions and tools that I've made to make things easier, and I will cover these in future. But if you're putting a 3D printer anywhere near your workshop, then suddenly the A1 with its lack of enclosure becomes a real question mark. I mean, you might be one of these woodworkers who has a really tidy workshop. Too tidy. No dust anywhere and everything is neatly arranged. And they're constantly digging holes in their garden late at night, but know nothing about the sudden spate of missing persons in their neighbourhood. However, for the rest of us, workshops are dusty and messy places, and this doesn't mix well with high precision devices. So the P1S becomes a frontrunner as the starter for woodworkers on this point alone. Now, if you're into model making, D&D or miniatures, then of course you could fit a 0.2mm nozzle onto any of these printers. But the reality is it's very likely you'll want to swap a lot. So printing those figures in a 0.2mm nozzle size and a 0.06mm layer height allows a huge difference in quality. But then printing the larger terrain pieces at that size will kill your print times. So for anyone switching between small and mid to large prints, the A1 quick change tool becomes a killer feature. So likewise, for jewellery makers, sewers and crafters, the A1 is a strong choice because you'll definitely want to print detailed models, but then larger pieces too for outfits or even just to help organise things. But you could also very quickly start to veer into things like using exotic filaments or cosplay, where prints can become much longer as you're printing that full-sized helmet or body armour. So in this case, the more controlled and stable temperature of an enclosed printer, like the P1S or the X1C, is something to consider. Gardeners, you just want to print big, strong pieces generally that will last outdoors in the elements. So PETG is great for you and everything works. So I'd go with the A1. Indeed, whilst most things will be bigger, there might be occasional times when a quick nozzle swap is handy. Plant labels that are super long lasting in a 0.2mm nozzle are an example. Then we get to the nights of the sky. Well, suddenly you're dealing with more unusual filaments. You need extra strength and durability. So in comes things like lightweight PLA, but also high fume materials like ABS. Not only is this more prone to warping and elephant footing on taller prints, so an enclosure helps, but when it comes to fumes, you get an enclosure with a filter. Not negotiable. So the P1S or the X1C are the only options, and the more extensive abilities of the X1C make it the more attractive the more serious you are about your hobby. In a similar vein, outdoor pursuits are strongly pointed towards the more advanced filament types, things like carbon fibre, nylon, polycarbonate and others. For this, a fully enclosed air-filtered design is essential, so the X1C or the P1S are ideal. Again, noting the X1C's ability to cope with more exotic filaments slightly better. And for art and design folks, you tend to be the most eclectic in the different materials and styles of your prints. So as a generic recommendation, the X1C will give you the most creative freedom. However, this is ultimately about you, not the printer. So take on board everything I've said up to now and think about the style of art and design that you do and pick the printer that fits that best. I've got filaments made of actual bronze that rust and polish like metal. I've got wood filaments with wood in them, glow in the dark, sparkly, colour changing based on the temperature, multicoloured, and so much more. You essentially need to pick the printer that suits your own palette. Now, there's also a few myths that I keep answering comments on, and people seem genuinely surprised when I mention them. So I thought I'd just note 3 of them here in case you see any outdated reviews mentioning this. Myth 1. These printers can't run locally and have to be connected to the cloud. Well, no, they don't. That's what the offline option is for. Just click it and you're sorted. Myth 2. I want to use only open source firmware. Well, again, Bambu have introduced that as an option. Just note they quite reasonably say that they can't be responsible for other people's code, but this is possible. Myth 3. I don't want to be locked into a closed ecosystem. Well, don't. Just like Prusa will naturally push Prusament and Prusa Slicer, and Creality will push their solutions, Bambu Lab has Bambu Slicer and their own range of filaments. But you can happily use whatever slicer you want and whatever filament you fancy. Bambu Lab do include some neat features on their filament, like they contain RFID tags to automatically recognise the filament type and colour when you add it. RFID tags, eh? It's like they've been watching my videos about how handy they are. But you don't have to use any of their options. You can use your own filament brand or your own favourite slicer if you fancy. So all these printers are outstanding in my eyes, and really don't worry about the speed, quality or reliability. They're all great. Just focus on what your interests are and pick one that suits your needs. And if in doubt, just buy the cheapest to start you off. You'll be buying another one anyway before you know it. Now, I'll be covering many more projects with these printers going forward, so watch out for them. They are my workhorses that power almost all the 3D prints you see in my videos, and they have thousands and thousands of hours of use. I've got links to all these printers on my site and in the description, so it's a great way to support me for free to help produce more videos in future. In fact, a few of you also commented about missing my videos when they drop, even though you've already subscribed. So you can either submit to the whims of the algorithm gods, or you can also subscribe for free to my Patreon, and I'll always ping you a note the moment a new video is launched. It's free to join, but you could also become a member, which gives you lots of extra features, like these lovely people have. I've actually decided to rejig the listings, as there's quite a horde. This way you can see the true pantheon of awesomeness of people who've been supporting my journey to improve the home for the longest. I'd love to hear if there's anything I've missed. There's bound to be elements given that I'm trying to keep at high level. One big area is resin printing for smaller models. It's not something I've dabbled in yet, and I know Bambu Lab don't have an offering here. So it'd be great to hear who you think are the market leaders in this space, as it's something I'd like to look at in future. I hope that's helped answer the question, and I'll make sure I keep my recommended products up to date on my site. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Hwyl fawr.